It is particularly critical for our study to note at this point the fact that the second campaign is both described in its chronological order in verses 29 and 30, and later reintroduced for explanation in greater detail in verses 40 through 43. This is not an uncommon biblical technique, and it is employed here for two reasons. The brief description in the first half of Daniel 11:29 and 30 allows the narrative which follows to focus first, in an undistracted way, upon the most important developments at the tribulation's midpoint. That is, the termination of the ministry of the two witnesses, the setting up of the abomination of desolation, and the commencement of the great persecution, the defining event of the great tribulation, while at the same time allowing for a later reintroduction of the second campaign in greater detail. For the specific geographical details given in Daniel 11:40 through 43, while potentially distracting in the first instance, are necessary in this latter context to explain the situation that results from the conquest of the south, in particular, the exploitation that follows the victory and the exclusion of Edom, Moab, and part of Ammon from the vast territorial conquests of the beast as havens for the believers who will flee Israel when the abomination of desolation is set up. During this period he will return and attack the south again, but the circumstances of this second campaign will not be like those of the first one. For ships of Kittim, that is the western Babylon, will attack with him so that he will be victorious. Daniel 11:29 and 30. Now at the time of the end, the king of the south, that is the Mahdi, will make a thrust at him, that is the beast, with the result that the king of the north will come against him like a whirlwind with chariots, and with cavalry, and with many ships. Daniel 11:40. The reference to the naval forces of Antichrist in both of these passages is noteworthy. In the first passage quoted, Kittim, literally the people of the island of Cyprus, is most often used in Scripture as a generic term to refer to all of the islands, that is, the nations of the world's western quadrant, Isaiah 23:1, Jeremiah 2:10, and Ezekiel 27:6. That is, as representative of all of the western sons of Japheth, from whom the islands of the Gentiles divided, Genesis 10:4 and 5. What this means is that these ships of Kittim are the ships of Babylon and its western allies. What we have here, therefore, is a reference to the beast's own navy, rather than to some extraneous force opposing him, as is often erroneously supposed. Once this point is understood, it is clear to see that in Daniel 11:30, these ships are the reason why circumstances are different in this second campaign, for it is just this naval superiority which proves to be the decisive element in the beast's victory, attacking with him. The second passage quoted is in complete agreement with this interpretation. For here we see that Antichrist's navy is not only the ultimate element named in the threefold list of his combat arms, stressing its importance, but is also the only one marked out as exceptional in terms of its quantity. That is, his ships are many, even in comparison to his certainly numerous chariots and cavalry. Together, these two scriptures confirm that the second campaign will be won by Antichrist through the decisive use of sea power, and the precise manner in which he will employ that power has also been given to us in prophecy, specifically in the last oracle of Balaam, son of Besor. Then Balaam pronounced his oracle and said, Alas! Who can survive once God unleashes it? That is the great tribulation. For ships will come from the direction of Kittim, and they will afflict Asher, and they will afflict Eber. For this is even the one that is Antichrist until he perishes. Numbers 24:23 and 24. It is not unexpected that Balaam, who sought to curse Israel, should be given this prophecy about the persecution emanating from the all-time nemesis of Israel, Antichrist. However, the context of Balaam's last oracles, Numbers 24:14 through 24, have the stated purpose of conveying information about the days to come, Numbers 24:14. In addition to this statement, and to the other eschatological elements in these prophecies, compare the irrefutably messianic star and scepter of Numbers 24:17, the phraseology of the Hebrew words used in verse 23 to identify the mystery man who will be responsible for the future. Affliction of Eber, vigam, for this is even the one, is reminiscent of that used in the key passage in Daniel, which likewise identifies Antichrist. That is Daniel 11:22, vigam naghid berith, for he is even the prince of the covenant, compare Daniel 9:27. Together, these facts make the connection between these ships of Kittim and the ships of Kittim in Daniel chapter 11 virtually certain. Balaam's prophecy also provides us with the crucial information which details the precise place of this invasion, namely, through present-day Lebanon, Syria, and Israel. For Asher, of course, is the original ancestor of Assyria, just as Eber is of Israel, making it clear that the entire eastern coastline of the Mediterranean will be the focus of this unprecedented invasion. The purpose for the massive amphibious assault suggested by these scriptures is plain enough when one considers the actions of the king of the south described in Daniel 11:40. In that verse, the king of the south is said to make a thrust against the king of the north in what would have to be a south to north direction, a maneuver which would entail the large-scale movement of most, if not all of his forces, toward the upper reaches of his realm, close to his border with Antichrist's kingdom. We may surmise that this has been Antichrist's expectation and plan from the very start, even from before the opening of the first campaign. By this time the Mahdi has no doubt mobilized an even larger army, confident of victory based upon the previous campaign and the improved ratio of forces that must now be even more heavily in his favor, when only those forces deployed on the ground are considered. After the king of the south thrusts to the north, Daniel 11:40 characterizes the beast's response as swift and furious as a whirlwind according to the Hebrew text, and we are again reminded of the leopard-like swiftness which characterizes all of Antichrist's operations. Revelation 13:2. Once the forces of the south have advanced into his trap, the beast will spring it by launching the largest amphibious invasion in history with the objective of cutting off his enemies from the rear, thus surrounding and then annihilating them. In this way, the last major independent military force outside of Antichrist's direct control will be eliminated with a single blow. Since this seaborne invasion will be directed at Syria, Lebanon, Israel, the general location of the final battle of this campaign is thus most likely somewhere in northern Iraq, Syria, and southern Turkey, Iran. This too is consistent with what we find elsewhere in Scripture. As we have seen, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, is a scriptural type of Antichrist, the prophetic king of Babylon. Within the prophecies of Isaiah 19 and 20, Jeremiah 46, and Ezekiel 29 through 32, we also see the conflict between the historical Nebuchadnezzar and Egypt's Pharaoh, functioning as a prophetical analogy to the end times with its conflict between Babylon's Antichrist and the Mahdi of the Southern Alliance, whose political center of gravity is also Egypt, compare Daniel 11:42. Therefore we can say that the conduct of Antichrist's campaigns against the Mahdi and his Southern Alliance will be similar in general terms to the scriptural representations found in these prophecies. Egypt will rise up like the Nile, and her waters, that is, the forces of the Southern Alliance, will surge forth like the Nile's streams. And she will say, I will rise up. I will inundate the world. I will destroy its cities and their inhabitants. Jeremiah 46:8. Jeremiah places the decisive battle which will ensue as a result of the king of the south's thrust and the king of the north's whirlwind response in the northern reaches of Southern Alliance territory by the river Euphrates, making the most likely focal point of the decisive engagement, as just mentioned, somewhere in the vicinity of present-day Syria, Iraq, and southern Turkey. Muster your troops with buckler and shield, and advance to the battle. Harness your horses and order your cavalry to mount up. Assemble with your helmets. Polish your spears. Put on your armor. But why do I see them all terrified and falling back to the rear? It is because their picked troops have been smashed and are in headlong flight. They do not even look back, for there is terror all around them. The Lord declares, let the swift not flee to safety, nor the strong escape. In the north, by the river Euphrates, they shall stumble and fall. Jeremiah 46:3-6.